Hi, Bill Henshaw here again for the Constitutional Crisis Channel. Another one of our Christmas time videos. This one again is on current events. This one in New Orleans, Louisiana. The only civil law state, by the way, it should be noted. They were, of course, that's based on the Napoleonic Code back before we made the Louisiana Purchase of 1803. But what they've just done in New Orleans, or are threatening to do, and they'll be hearing about this from me too, probably a document you'll be able to get on this website at a very reasonable cost, is threatening to remove the statue of Robert E. Lee that's been there for 130 years on the grounds that certain insular minority groups find that offensive and think that he's, one of these remnants of slavery, and therefore this is a racist statue and it should be taken down. Well, let me tell you something here. If that would have happened back when I was growing up, in Virginia and West Bygaush, Virginia, in the summer times particularly, anyone who would have made a suggestion like that might well have found himself up there on the boughs of a tree with a rope around his neck. I mean, that's serious business here. Robert E. Lee, one of the most well-respected, well-loved people on either side of the war between the states. And if you don't know, by the way, he also attended West Point, which so many of the generals on both sides did before the war. But I've never heard bad things said about Robert E. Lee. He was just doing the right things for his men and for his country, which was the CSA at the time, the Confederate States of America. And he was the one that made the decision at the end at the Appomattox Courthouse to formally end the hostilities because it was just too much, danger and peril to put the people of the South in any longer when it was apparently a hopeless cause. He could have continued to fight on, and those troops would have been there for him. I have no question about that. But he did the right thing there by signing the decree at Appomattox Courthouse with hiring Ulysses Simpson Grant, who later became president. But the thing about that was interesting in another video for another day. But my research has not uncovered any treaty that would have ended a war with the Confederate States of America, which strongly suggests in my mind that no state of war ever existed as such. That was a rebellion or invasion, is all it was. And Congress said early on in 1861, this is not a war of conquest. Said it right there. I'll get that for you. Look in the notes below. That'll be there. I've got the dead bang citation. Not a war of conquest. And yet when the war is over, these bashers like old Dad Stevens come in there from Pennsylvania and claim that they're going to rule the states under military law pursuant to the doctrine of state suicide. Well, let me tell you about that one, people. Not only is that what they did then, that's still the case 150 years later, and not just with the states then lately in rebellion. All of them, north of the Mason-Dixon line. There are no states because of what these bastards did in the 39th Congress. And maybe it had before. I'm working on some information I'll get to you when I confirm it, that this may have gone back another 5 or 6 years prior. But as I say, that's a video for another day. In any case, even consider removing the statue of Robert E. Lee. My goodness. You might sooner in Louisiana remove the statue of Huey Long, the Kingfisher, who was the people's popular politician back in the day, and he got himself bumped off too for having some non-politically correct views. But geez, if we're going to do that, why not go into Washington, D.C. and take down the damn statue they have there of Alexander Hamilton? Do some good here. That when you get no argument with me. But they're really considering doing this, and this is yet another slap in the face of the lawful de jure free white people here that comprise the sovereign body politic of this nation and republic. Like it or not, that's a fact. Can't be changed. And you look up that infamous Dred Scott case, and you're going to find out that's exactly what the Supreme Court said. But that's not the reason it's infamous, as I mentioned before. What they further said in the opinion, although it dicta, meaning it wasn't what decided the case, they talk a lot in there about the powers of Congress in territories. That was the real issue about the war between the states. Slavery was merely a convenient context to get that war engaged, and they damn well know this at 120 Broadway, New York, too. Exactly what I'm saying here. That's what they did. They preyed on an issue like that to get people's support when they had nothing in mind to do anything real about that, and they haven't done in the 150 years since. As I've said in an earlier video, we review the first, I think it's 700 cases that reached the Supreme Court under the Civil Rights Acts, and this covers up until about 1900 or 1910. 8 of those cases, 8, involve rights of black people in the South. 8. All the rest of them involve corporations. And that was the real intent of that amendment, and that's why it has to go off the books, and it should do it forthwith. But what they're doing is trying to keep covered up at all costs, what I'm just telling you here, because if we restore the sovereign body politic here, that's going to dissolve this government, perhaps even overnight, because they've got nobody in office that's holding that office lawfully. Absolutely none. No electorate, no states. I've covered these things in other videos, but it's not there. That's what they can't afford to have happen, because that'll bring this government down. It's exactly what I want to do. It's long overdue. If I had known this 50 years ago when I was in school, who knows what I might have been able to do at this point. But they never taught me anything like that, and they probably didn't teach you in your schools either. Even in the private Jesuit schools, which are manifestly better than the mandatory public education, you rarely got this kind of stuff. It doesn't happen, because they keep it very carefully covered up so no one knows it. But I do, and I'm out there trying to tell you and trying to get you to do what I'm doing with very little risk. I'm right in their faces all the time. You don't have to be. But you can do what I'm doing, file on the same paper, you'll get the same results. And as many of us do this, sooner or later, it's going to force the issue. And the bastards are going to have to do their job, especially the 904s in Washington, and say what the law is. When they do that, the game is over. That's the goal. Well, I've gotten a little bit far afield here on this video, but the point is, what they're doing with the statute of Robert E. Lee. And as you know, it's been done in other states, across the South, South Carolina in particular, the bedrock home place of states' rights, and that's why they're going after it so much there. Mississippi has refused to knuckle under in many cases, and they get a lot of credit for that. But this is a pattern and practice of events that are going on, and it needs to stop, because the real agenda is much uglier than you can ever believe. And like I said, they know this as well in those corporate boardrooms as I do. They know what's going on. They don't want you to know it. Stick with me, and I'll teach you, and we're going to beat the bastards. Thank you.